So why are the four Gospels? People nowadays quite often complain that the Nag Hammadi library and the Gospels that have been discovered later aren't included in the Christian canon. But there's probably a reason for that. And when you find those Gospels and you want to read them, they're quite enlightening, but they are for the advanced student. The four basic Gospels are what St. Irenaeus summed up as what we need. He said there have to be four Gospels, just as there are four winds of heaven and four corners of earth. Now, we know there aren't four corners of earth nowadays, but why did he say that? Well, the simplest answer is that there were four courts of the Hebrew temple. Both the first temple and the second temple had four courts. The first was the court of the Gentiles, which meant that anybody could go there. Then there was the court of the women, which is where families, believers went. They had a lot of fun in those courts. They had picnics and talks and occasionally arranged some marriages. And then there was the court of the men. Now, this is second temple. We don't know that there was a court of the men in the first temple, but the third court is the one for the people who are involved in the work of spirituality. And finally, there's the Holy of Holies, which is the great place of the altar and the menorah, the place where God was said to reside. So we have four Gospels. We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Oddly enough, Luke would probably be the one that we might link to the court of the Gentiles because it's the one which is about the outsider. Luke's gospel is one of the most popular ones because it features so many stories of women and foreigners. There are 19 stories of women in the Gospel of Luke and only 4 or 5 in Matthew, Mark, or John. However, if you put them in the order they're in the Bible, we'll say that Matthew is the one that equates to the outer court of the temple, because Matthew is the gospel for the Jewish nation. It's a transition gospel. It talks about Joseph as the father of Jesus rather than Luke talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus. Now, the story is that Joseph wasn't the natural father of Jesus, but he was certainly the man who raised Jesus. And Luke is much more feminine than Matthew, which is the one about physical kingship. And there are teachings that say that the four Gospels and the four courts of the temple represent the four great elements of earth, water, air, and fire. And they would fit that way because Matthew is practical. Matthew has the kings. Matthew talks about the physical prowess of Jesus. And most of the miracles in Matthew are physical healings. There are also psychological or demon healings, as there are in Mark, but there are far more of those in Mark. And in a way, that sort of kind of shows that Matthew is about the physical world and Mark is about the watery psychological world. It's the gospel in which Jesus is learning to be this great healer. And in Mark, in places, he gets quite annoyed with people. He's very, very human in Mark, in this learning into how to become this anointed of the divine. Luke, again, is the gospel of the outsider. It's the one where the women are featured and featured and featured. And John's off with the fairies, really. John is rightly called the gospel of the divine. That's the gospel of fire. Luke is air, Mark is water, Matthew is earth. But John is completely different from the others in style. The three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, tell of Jesus doing stories, parables. It's always, this is like that, this is like this, the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of God is like. But in John, it's just, that's it. The great 7 I am phrases of Jesus. I am the way, the truth, the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. Or I am the true vine, or I am the good shepherd. Those are all in the Gospel of John. And that is the gospel of Jesus speaking as the Christ consciousness. Mystics say that the Gospel of John should be read with you in the place of Jesus, trying to lift yourself up to become one of his true followers as a healer and a teacher in his name. And Jesus does say, I and the Father are one. But he also says, do you not know that you are God's and that those who follow me will do even greater works than I do? So the job of the Christian is to follow Jesus, to do the work that Jesus is teaching, and to take on the fact that I have to be the way, the truth, and the life right now. Jesus in body is not here, but I can embody Christ consciousness. I can become the healer. I can become the teacher. I can spread love.